in every one of us is a poor person. There's still a poor person inside me. And I still go to the supermarket and say, oh, Crest is on sale or Colgate's on sale. There's also a middle class person. And the middle class person wants security. They want that steady paycheck. And there's a rich person. And they're all inside of us except that it's not taught. You're taught to go to school, get a job, and get a paycheck. You're not taught how to get rich. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my rich dad refused to pay me. He said the paycheck was one of the most damaging things you could take in your life. He says the moment you take a paycheck, you're an employee, and that's the mindset. So my rich dad never paid me. He drew up my poor dad, government employee, and that's, you gotta pay people, you gotta pay people. And Rich Dad was not saying that the paycheck was bad. He says you didn't want to be a slave to money. So as an entrepreneur, if Rich Dad folded, I just started another company. I don't need a paycheck. I don't need anybody to take care of me. If my government doesn't like me, I move to another country because they need entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So the entrepreneur is not so much the business. The entrepreneur is really the mindset and the skill sets and the different set of rules. You see, I don't operate, small business does not operate in the same rules as big business.
Do you think the direction America is going right now, they're driving some of the entrepreneurs out?
You can't drive a real entrepreneur out.
Well, when I say out, meaning out of the country, could that be where somebody says, I'm going to go outsource or I'm going to go move my business elsewhere? You think that's a cause and effect?
Could be, but I think they're just lousy entrepreneur.
Got it.
Look, people say, well, if they make the regulations real hard, the guy can't be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs have one thing in common. They keep going. They'll change the rules. They'll reinvent the rules. Mm-hmm. They don't just take one answer. So a real entrepreneur, it really makes no difference which country you're in. That's my belief. So, I
love that.
It's just a mindset. It's F you. You mess with me, I'll find a way around it. I have a friend, he's multi-family rich guy from France. And, France is as communistic as it gets.
75% top line for $1 million earners.
Yeah, but that's why he lives here. So he started buying vineyards in Napa and Sonoma. So he went back to the French government and he says, it's his wine. He says, I want to ship my wine in bulk to California. And the government says, you can't do that. So
this is the French government saying you can't ship it.
Yeah, and here's a guy, I think he's 5 generations, French wine guy. This guy is an entrepreneur. He says, okay, I can't ship it in barrels. The guy goes, yeah. He says, okay, I'll ship it in bottles. So he bottled all of his stuff. It cost him more money, but he still figured out how to do it. Do you know what I mean? And now he has his wine with his California wine and all this. And so he went back to the French government and said, here, try this. See if it's not better. And so now they're all confused because he didn't break any rules. So I'll say it again. Entrepreneur is a mindset first, a skill set, and rules. And depending upon whether you're an employee or a small business, the rules are different. The mindsets are different. The skill sets are different.
So what you're saying is education, the mindsets can be taught, and if I learn the mindsets, and earlier you talked about, when I asked you a question about can somebody go out there and do something about this, there's got to be desire. But if I feed my mind, I got desire, I have an opportunity to make it as an entrepreneur.
Desire and ambition.
Sure.
That's what it takes.
Sure.
That's why I say everybody can open a lemonade stand, but very few can be a rich one.
So last question, and we'll wrap up here about this book is earlier when you were talking about America's going to collapse. Great. I asked you a question. I said, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges that we're looking at? And you mentioned willpower. Can you elaborate on that willpower a little bit, on what you meant by that?
Yeah, it's also called the entrepreneurial spirit. Mm-hmm. But what we were actually talking about was there's no such thing as a bad economy. There's external, you and I, we all have an external economy, but we also have an internal economy. Mm-hmm. And the willpower is to change our internal economy. So for me, I can see the good and I can see the bad. I don't really give a damn. because I'm going to be rich anyway. But a poor person with a poor personal economy, all they're going to see is a bad economy because they don't know how to make money in any economy. And a middle class person, they have a middle class economy. You know, what they want is a nice house and a steady paycheck and the job and the car. And so when you take their job away, to them, that's disaster. Well, since an entrepreneur doesn't have a job anyway, it's no big deal. So all I'm saying to people, and it's what Bucky Fuller taught me, is always two sides, you know what I mean? Unity is plural, at minimum two. So if you think the economy is bad, it's because your economy is bad. If you think that steady, employment is important, then you'll see an economy without jobs.
Your economy.
Your economy
DNA
versus the external economy.
Got it. What you control versus what you can't control.
I can control. Yeah, it's called an internal focus
Mm-hmm.
versus an external focus. So the real entrepreneur has an internal focus. That if they fall down, they say, "Oh, this is good, because I'm going to go up higher." The average person will fall down and say, "Oh, I'm going to take some Prozac," or somebody has a mistake. Oh, the mistakes don't matter. Well, mistakes matter. It means you didn't know something. But a real entrepreneur, whether they fall down, they always can go up. They can stand back up and go higher. That no matter what happens to them, they get stronger and better and smarter and happier. But a person with a weak internal mindset is that they're so afraid of what happens, it generally happens. Like, people who are afraid of losing their jobs, they generally lose their jobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. So everything comes through you.
Yeah, so the entrepreneur first job is to control inside here, not outside there.
So what could you say, if you could say one thing to somebody who's never been an entrepreneur and they're thinking about making the leap of faith into becoming an entrepreneur, what could you tell them?
Well, I'll just tell them the same thing that happened to me. My last paycheck, I still remember it clearly. It was one of the worst and the best days of my life. And I was in Puerto Rico. I was working for Xerox, and my boss gave me it wasn't a paycheck, it was a bonus check. I think it was about $30,000, taxable. It's the only problem with that. So I got this check, and I went, holy mackerel. You know what I mean? So I was excited, but I was also disturbed. And so this other guy comes up to me, his name was John, and John says to me, he says, "You're going to be back." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because you're going to fail." I looked at him and said, "Look," few expletive words, because that's what he did. He left Xerox, failed, and he came back. And I said, "Look, you failed and you came back, but I'm going to fail and I'm never coming back." And that's the attitude. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you say, "Well, if I fail, I'll go back to mommy and daddy," then that's what you'll do. So if you fail, that's when I became an entrepreneur, because I had no money. I had no money for years. I didn't have a paycheck. But that's what my rich dad encouraged me to do. He says, when you don't have this paycheck, you get hungrier, smarter, and it's a test of your character. Will you become a crook? Will you become dishonest? Will you cheat and steal? Or will you become a better human being? So really, that's the benefit of becoming an entrepreneur, is you really find out who you are when you don't have anything. And that's why my rich dad never gave me a paycheck. He says, the moment you take that paycheck, you're an employee. You've got to be stronger than that. It's about inside control.
Please subscribe to my channel if you have not done it yet, and don't forget to click the notification button. I hope you guys learned and enjoyed this video. Thank you, and have a great day.